everyone, and welcome to another episode of Nightcrawler's Bigfoot Radio. It is February 20th, 2017. My name is Laurie Hood, and I'm here with Jeff Stewart, Lauren and Ricky Smith. And it's been raining all day here. How's the weather everywhere else?
Raining.
You don't count as everywhere else. You're like a mile away from her.
I'm actually about 30 miles away. It's far enough.
Difference. It's rainy here as well. Rainy and supposed to be 70-something tomorrow, you know. The usual.
You know, it's the same line. It's the same line of clouds that I mean, it starts down here in the Gulf and it goes straight, and it's heading it's heading northeast. So when I was looking at it on the map, I said, "Wow, she's getting the same storm we're getting." You know, it's like awesome. But well, we have a celebrity with us today. Mr. Stewart was on real radio, not internet radio. FM radio. What was that? What was it? I can't remember. KFAB? Yeah, okay. Yeah. In Omaha, Nebraska. That's right. So tell us how that went.
It was really nice. The host of the show, Chris Baker, just a super nice guy. Basically, they had a Bigfoot conference there in Nebraska, and he's had several paranormal people on in the past and stuff, and he said, hey, I want a Bigfoot person, I guess, and so they contacted you somehow, and magically it just appears, internet, whatever, it's just magic, and you're like, hey,
figured I would, after we've been on the air off and on for 7 years and had nothing but Bigfoot researchers for 95%, that I would at least know one Bigfoot researcher. But, a lot of them were working today. And, well, not that I even, I went to you because I thought, surely, it's raining today, he will not be busy. And I was right. So thank God, But I just, when I was initially asked, I was just overwhelmed because I know so many good ones.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I know so many good ones. And I said, I said, do you want somebody from Nebraska? Do you want somebody from the Midwest? Do you want somebody from the East Coast or the West Coast? Be more specific. I mean, gosh, I could hook you up with somebody in Australia. What do you want, And he said,
we got friends all over the globe. I don't really know any. Like. I really and truthfully don't know any part of the globe that one or the other of us does not know someone, have some contact. I don't think I have anybody in Antarctica, but, I don't think there's a Bigfoot in Antarctica.
I think that I made a very good choice because when I heard back from him, he was very happy. So what did they do? They just asked you a bunch of questions, and how did that go, by the way?
Yeah, basically he gave me a really nice introduction, and then he just jumped right straight into just asking me about 900 questions, and they were really good, tough questions. They weren't your standard fluffy questions that everybody rolls their eyes and goes, well, man, anybody can answer that. No, he wanted some pretty good stuff, and then we were on for about 10 minutes, and he said, we're going to take a break now, have a little intermission. He said, but you know what? He said, I was going to do something different on the second half of the show, but, I want you to stick with me. And when we come back, if you don't mind, we'll take some callers, and we'll answer some questions, and I'll just let you just stay on with me for the rest of the show. And I was like, whatever you want to do.
You're
I'm here.
so good.
And so we got
Oh my
on the
gosh.
show, and he started taking some callers, and they were really nice. But one of the most fun thing was while we were on intermission, he actually knows, and the host of the show is actually friends with Larry the Cable Guy. And I do not know how they're friends or any of this stuff. I didn't ask. But during the intermission, Larry the Cable Guy called the host of the show on his cell phone, on his personal cell phone, and started talking about Bigfoot while we were on intermission. And come to find out, Larry the Cable Guy. Yes, Larry the Cable Guy. Don't know if he was jesting or what, but according to what was being passed back and forth there, he's a very, very big Bigfoot believer.
Wow.
He's interested in it. He's into the Bigfoot phenomena. He is. I don't think he's into the research or anything of it, but he's a fan, you know. And so it was really cool. And to find out that, you know, Larry the Cable Guy watched me on Survivor Man Bigfoot, that was really cool to find out. So.
Hey! You thought it was going to be a regular day.
Yeah. And it was just really good. You know, they asked questions, you know, how come we haven't, you know, gotten pictures, you know, good pictures. And, of course, I threw, you know, my theories. And like I explained to them, everything's just a theory until we can actually prove it. And, you know, I gave my theories on the bioelectrical manipulation and bioelectrical field, and also on infrasound. So they liked it. And
cool. Well, I figured you could hold up to some tough questions.
Yeah.
You know, especially since you had no time to prepare. It was just threw you in there and like a lion, right into the lion's den. You had
But, you know, I'm the type of
12
person, I don't like to prepare. I honestly don't like to prepare for shows.
That's worth
it. I like to play it off the cuff because I don't want to ever seem scripted, you know, in anything I do. I want it to be an honest reaction and an honest answer. You know, I get a lot of shows that I've been on, like podcasts and things, where some of the hosts would call me the day before and say, okay, I want to go over the questions with you. I want to go over the content of the show with you. And I'm like, well, you're welcome to go over anything with me, but I don't want to know the questions ahead of time.
Right.
And they're like, wow, most people want to know them. And I'm like, most of the people I know don't.
Yeah, because that's the best way to test what you know. And if you don't know the answer to a question, you just say, I don't know. And we've gotten that on this show. I don't really know how to answer that, you know. I have no answers for that. And that
I would rather have an honest,
you know?
I don't know, than some pre-scripted answer, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome that he liked you so much that he kept you on longer, because we kind of did the same thing. Hell, we liked you so much we made you a host. So
that's right.
Thank you so much.
We got you first. I hope they don't plan on keeping you over there. I mean, my goodness.
All right, let's bring the guest on before his head gets too big to get through the door.
I'm looking so forward to speaking with our guest.
Yes, I've heard a lot of nice things about him too. You know, I'm not real good on investigating people, and I'm not huge in the community, which is hard to believe because I'll bring people up, but I always let God help me find people, and God helped me with this one. I checked on him. I looked at some of his photographs and some of the work he's done, and I was very impressed with it. But then when I put him up as our next guest, I heard from quite a few people that he is a very excellent guest and that we will be very happy with him. So let's bring Mr. Dan Lindholm on. Lauren, if you'll read that bio real quick, we'll bring him on.
Okay. Nightcallers Bigfoot Radio presents Dan Lindholm from Oregon. Dan Lindholm's immersion into the subject started in 1986 when he had his very first intense encounter. It was a life-changing event for an 18-year-old kid, and while keeping his ear to the ground for any Bigfoot news, he kept his story to himself for 25 years before finally telling it publicly. Dan told his story and the stories of friends growing up in the North Carolina Sasquatch Stories series on the Bigtruth YouTube channel. Ed Brown came on board for the sit-down with Ed Brown and the Sasquatch Encounter series and Dan's ongoing research in a very active area of the Southern Oregon Cascades, and this can be found on Bigtruth Sasquatch Investigations tab on the Bigtruth YouTube channel. Bigtruth blog can be found at bigtruthblog.blogspot.com. The blog contains articles by Dan and Ed Brown, and also a blog series by the best-selling author Scott Harper, documenting the earliest Sasquatch encounters from every state in the country. Dan runs the Bigtruth page on the Facebook, which is a daily Bigfoot news source and a couple of related groups. Dan's first ebook, The Wild Boy of Kentucky, was recently published and is available at the Kindle Store. Dan is happily married with 3 kids and 4 grandkids. He has a passion for nature and the subject that takes him into the pristine Sky Lakes wilderness on a regular basis. Join us as we bring Dan Lindholm from Oregon.
Welcome, Mr. Dan Lindholm from Oregon. How are you doing today?
Welcome to the show.
Sean, thanks a lot.
Yes, sir.
I hate to just jump in, but in 1986 it all started for you. Can you, it's like, normally we ask, how did this all begin for you? But we know that it started in 1986, and it was a life-changing event, and that you were 18 years old. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, you bet. So, like I said, I was 18, and I grew up in a small community. There's a couple little small towns on the north side of Clear Lake in Northern California. Oh, just a correction on the intro. That's Northern California, not North Carolina. But anyway.
I know she did say Carolina, though, but yeah, it's North
That's
Carolina.
okay. So I grew up in Northern California, and now I live in Oregon. And in between, I was in Idaho for about 20 years. But that's kind of beside the point. Let's get back. I was in this small little town, and it's called Upper Lake. And we all went to Upper Lake High School. From all the little towns around that area all went to one high school. We only had about 250 kids in our whole high school, so it's pretty small little communities there. Around the largest natural lake in California is Clear Lake. And so my first experience where I actually saw one, my buddy and I were hanging out. There's this bridge in downtown Upper Lake where us kids used to always just kind of hang out and wait for other people to come by or whatever, and do whatever and kill time or So I'm 18 years old, and I'm there with my friend. I think he was about 16, and we're just hanging out. And my friend Les pulls up in his Jeep, and he had 2 girls with him. And one of the girls was from our high school. We knew her. And the other one was from another school, over in Lakeport. So we didn't know her. And one of the first things he says is, we're going to go up to Pinnacle Rock and stay the night. And he says, but I don't have no headlights, so we have to stay the night. So
wow.
And he asked if we wanted to go. And I was like, yeah, I love that place. Let's go. This place is it's so cool. And we used to go there all the time as kids. There's just a beautiful view from up there, 360 degrees. You can see off into the mountains. You can see Clear Lake down below you. And it's just a really, really cool place up in the mountains, trees and everything, And so we all jump in the Jeep, and we head on up to Pinnacle Rock. Like, cool, right on. This is going to be awesome. And I had never stayed the night up there, actually. I'd been up there probably 20 times before that, but never stayed the night or anything. And so we get up there, and the first thing I say is, let's go to the end of the road and check out the view, because just not even a quarter mile down the road, a couple hundred yards, was the very end of the road, and it just stopped like a cliff. And there was a really cool view from right there. I'd been out there a couple times, and nobody else wanted to go out there with me. They all just wanted to head straight up to Pinnacle Rock. which we just parked down below it. You know, it's just a short little hike up to the top of the rock. And so I go chasing down the road, and almost immediately after I left the Jeep and left those guys, I started getting this feeling of being watched. I was just like, wow, this is weird. And then I get out there, and I mean, the hair on the back of my neck is standing up, and I'm just like, what is going on? So I thought my friends must be sneaking up behind me or something. You know, they must be playing a trick on me. So I get out to the end of the road, and I'm checking out the view. And, you know, I used to be an athlete back in school, and I was, you know, really good shape and quick. I played basketball and stuff, so I just spun around really fast, like as fast as I could. Just like, you know, trying to catch them, like trying to mess with me. Yeah. And when I spun around, I saw something dark and hairy bail behind the bush, back behind me about 20 or 30 yards, right at the opening of the turnaround. And I was just like, what in the heck? And I got scared. Now I found this talking to a lot of witnesses and stuff too, you always tend to put stuff in a box. And at that time, the only thing I could think of was a bear.
Yeah, that's what I would think too.
Sasquatch was the farthest thing from my mind. So I go, okay, there might be a bear. So I start hightailing it back to the rock where those guys are at. And I was almost running. I was walking so fast. And I had that feeling like you wouldn't believe, the hair on the back of my neck standing up. I'm being watched. And all the way walking up the rock, I was being watched. And I was like, wow, this is really creepy. And I got up there, and the first thing I said, I think I saw a bear. I think there's a bear. The first thing my friend Les says is, was it the monkey man? And we all just started laughing, and we're like, what do you mean the monkey man? He's all, no, really, because I guess Les had spent a lot of time out in the woods. And he said they whoop at you, and they throw rocks, and he's seen them a couple times. And we couldn't believe it. The rest of us were like, we were just laughing, and, I mean, we're practically rolling when he's telling us about the monkey man, right? So we're all sitting on top of the rock enjoying the view, and the four of us, the two girls and me and my friend, were all facing the lake and looking out at the view, and Les was facing us. And we're all sitting, you know, like Indian style or, you know, cross-legged on the top of the rock. And all of a sudden, Les jumps up, and he's all, did you see that? And he ran back behind me to the backside of Pinnacle Rock. And it is like a sheer cliff on the backside of this rock. It's where the volunteer firemen used to do their rappel training. So, I mean, it was pretty, it's like a sheer cliff. And he said that he saw something poke its head up. He saw a little one poke its head up and look at us. And when he ran back there, he saw it scurrying around the backside of the rock down below him. Like it climbed down this cliff. And we were just like, we thought he was totally full of it, okay, at this point. We were just laughing. We thought that he was just taking his monkey man story a little too far, you know what I mean? So we're just all like, yeah, right, whatever. And he told us a few stories that had happened to him out in the forest, and mainly it just was like whoops and rocks being thrown and stuff. And
were the girls scared? Were the girls scared?
They were kind of laughing it off too at that point. And
it was still daylight at this point also, right? Okay.
Right. And it was just starting to get dusk. It was just, you know, the sun was going down, so we decided it was time to start a fire. So we all go down by the Jeep, down by the parking lot, and we start looking for wood, and we started collecting up this wood, and we all, you know, we took about 5 or 10 minutes. Everybody split up, and we came back, and we all had our wood, and me and Les were both hunched over the fire trying to get it going, you know, and all of a sudden we hear this bump, and we turn and look, and this big rock rolls right at our feet. And I'm talking a big piece of granite about 1.5 feet by 1 foot, like egg-shaped, rugged piece of granite. Came out of nowhere, landed about 10 feet away, and rolled right at our feet. And I'm just like, what in the heck? Did that fall off of the rock? And we were down a little ways away from the rock at this point. You know, it's a little bit of a hike to get up there. And Les is like, there's no way that fell off the rock. It would have landed at the bottom of the rock. It wouldn't have landed way over here by us. And we were all just looking at each other like, what in the heck? So we go ahead and we start the fire. And we're just standing around the fire, telling stories, whatever. being kids, and all of a sudden Les goes, "God dang it, knock it off! Quit throwing rocks!" And we all started laughing. You know, we're thinking, oh, he's telling his monkey man story some more, you know, and we're just laughing our heads off at the guy, thinking that he's totally pulling our leg. And a couple minutes later, he got hit by another rock, and he's all, "God dang it, I said quit throwing rocks!" And we're all like, "No way! This is we'll quit it, dude. Stop it!" All right.
Yeah.
And then, like a minute later, my friend Michael got hit with a rock, and these are just little pebbles. They're just little rocks. They weren't big like the big one that was thrown. Okay, so he gets hit by a rock, and then it was on. He was like scared to death, and he's like freaking out. And then we knew for sure that something was really going on, and it wasn't just Les telling us stories. So a couple minutes later, or it might have even been a half hour, both Les and Michael start throwing rocks into the bushes where these rocks are coming from.
Uh-huh.
And now this is kind of interesting. I got hit too. We all got us three guys all got hit with rocks. The two girls never got hit with a rock. So that's
because girls are pretty.
Exactly. And honestly, I think that's probably why they were even hanging around, is because we had a couple girls with us, you know, and so Sasquatch are up there going, "Ooh, check it out." So anyway, they're having a rock fight with the bushes. The rocks keep coming out of the bushes, and they keep throwing rocks into the bushes. And I'm sitting there talking to the girls around the fire while these two guys are throwing rocks and yelling. And, you know, we just thought, these guys are crazy. And all of a sudden, they go, I saw it. Did you see it? And they both saw one throwing a rock next to the bush. And they said it was a little one, like, you know, comparable to like a 12-year-old boy.
Uh-huh.
And it was no more than like 5 minutes later, and runs like backwards and sideways at the same time, falling over his own feet. And he's all, twins! And apparently him and Les both saw him. There was twins. The 12-year-old boy, there was two of them. There was one on each side of this bush, and they saw them both at the same time throwing rocks. So these guys were freaking out. And then it was funny. From then on, all night long, Michael just kept on mumbling like, "Twins! I can't believe it! Twins! Saw twins!" And I've still not seen. You know, I saw a flash of color or something at the very first, but I didn't see any of this going on. I'm just sitting there talking to the girls. There's another pretty interesting aspect of this story, and a lot of stories, I guess, is you can have a group of people, and everyone's experience is different. You know, some people see it, some people don't.
That is true.
You know, one of the girls never saw anything the entire time all this happened. All right, the other girl saw what I saw, which is coming up pretty quick. So anyway, we're still standing around the fire, and my friend Les, he kicks at this log, and you know how a fire will blaze up when you kick it? Well, that happened, and it lit up the whole area, and bam, me and this girl, Susan, we both saw this Sasquatch about 30 feet away from us standing next to this tree, and this was the big boy. This was like an 8-foot tall, 4-foot wide Sasquatch standing next to this tree looking at us. And she's like, "Oh, my God." And I was like, "Oh, geez, I saw it too." You know, and it was just, we saw him for maybe 2 seconds. I mean, it was so quick. It lit up, and he was looking right at us, and you tend to look right at the face. I couldn't tell you details about the body, except for I just got a sense that it was massive. But the face, I looked right at the face, and he looked right at us, and he kind of opened his mouth like and went right behind that tree. So the first thing we started doing is kicking the fire and throwing wood in there and trying to get the fire to blaze up, because we actually had a flashlight earlier, and when he pulled it out, it was one of those things where you turn it on and it's off, and then you hit it and it comes on, and then it starts fading out. The battery was totally almost dead on this battery, all right? And, I mean, nowadays kids don't even know with their cell phones. They got their flashlight all the time. But back in the day, we used to use these flashlights. You know, you might have seen a cop with one. So at one point I even said, I will walk in front of the Jeep and guide us. Let's just go. You know, unless it's like, there's no way I'm going to drive down the hill, down this mountain in the dark, you know? So, okay, so that was out. So we didn't have a flashlight. So like I said, we got the fire going back up, and I even went over there, and I was all looking, and of course, nothing to be seen. He was gone. So we're like freaked out now because all of us except for the one girl have actually seen him now, you know, and we had to stay the night.
Yeah. No shelter other than the vehicle. Right. Did y'all think about sleeping in the vehicle?
Well, actually, the vehicle was wide open. It's an old Jeep, like an old Army Jeep.
Oh,
there was no inside.
Oh, my gosh.
So Les says he's going to sleep in the Jeep, and he grabs a sleeping bag, and there was like 2 other sleeping bags. And we zipped the sleeping bags together, and we all tried to get in there, and there was just no way we were all going to fit. So Michael's like, forget this, and he gets up, and he goes over with Les, and they both sit in the front of the Jeep, and they put the sleeping bag over the top of them. And somehow I ended up in a sleeping bag with 2 girls, which was pretty amazing. But anyway, I don't think I slept but like 20 minutes all night because I was laying there, and I kept hearing these big footsteps. Like the rock was up above us, the Jeep was down below us, and on both sides it was forest. And on both sides, all night long, I kept hearing these big footsteps. And everybody finally got roused up, you know, right as the sun is barely coming up. We're talking like 5 in the morning. Everybody gets up, and I'm like, God, there was something walking around. It must have been like elk or something. And Les is like, it was the monkey man. Don't you remember last night, all that stuff that went on? You know, and it was like, yeah, I remembered, but it's one of those things you have a hard time putting 2 and 2 together because you're trying to put everything in a box. And one thing that struck me was I thought I had seen some kind of crazy wild man because this thing did look really human. All right.
Wow.
I know back east, a lot of them look more like apes or whatever, but this looked like a crazy wild man. And I mean, it had like more like Native American features, kind of I'd say that because of the way the beard was, you know, it was like real sketchy, like a real sketchy little mustache. And there was just more hair on the sides of the face than like a full beard. It was, you know, and like I say, a wide nose, big old wide mouth. And gosh, I've found a few things of art that it just really, I was really taken aback when I saw it because it was like.
Did it have
close.
the round head or did it have the sagittal crest?
I did not see a sagittal crest.
Okay.
Okay, but I certainly wasn't looking for that. You know, I got to say that. But yeah, I didn't notice a pointy head. What I did notice was, and this is kind of unique to my experience, I've never really heard anybody else talk about this. It looked like it had pointy ears, which sounds funny. But I really think looking back that its hair was probably caught on its ears and just sticking up on the sides.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And that's what I think. And he was kind of disheveled looking. And, you know, when he opened his mouth, I could see teeth, but they didn't look like, you know, what you see in everybody's artwork or whatever. It looked like his teeth had been battered and bruised and in pretty bad shape, you know, what I saw. So it looked like an old guy, you know, maybe 45 or 50. I say old guy because I was only 18. Looked like he was about my age, you know. He was an older guy. He wasn't, you know, a young Sasquatch, but he was certainly big and strong, you know.
But
so,
you know, you say you didn't sleep very much that night. You had to have been terrified.
Oh, I was.
Were you?
We all were.
Well, okay. Because I know there was a lot of laughing, and a lot of times when you're nervous and scared, you'll laugh. It's a natural reaction to being terrified, and
right.
But not being able to leave, that is like that's movie material right there. You're stuck there for the night. You don't have headlights to get back down with. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And you're just stuck dealing with it. Whatever happens, you know. We didn't know what the heck was going to happen to us. We thought, you know, I don't know. Thought we were going to end up somebody's dinner or something. We didn't know. But it was definitely scary.
How come you kept it to yourself for 25 years? Were you afraid no one would believe you?
Not so much that no one would believe me, but I feared the ridicule and the, you know, people thinking it was a hoax or just total BS. Because, you know, I'm a real honest person just normally. And well, I've always hated to be called a liar or for somebody to think that I wasn't telling them the truth. It's like my pet peeve, you know. So that had a lot to do with it, you know. I don't want to have to defend something that is a mystery, a myth. You know what I mean? It was back in the day. This is back in the day when basically the only thing that was ever on about Bigfoot was like In Search Of and stuff. And they said it was like a big ape, you know, an upright ape. And what I saw was not a bipedal ape. It looked much more human. So that was part of it too, that I never really justified that to myself that was a Bigfoot. You know what I mean? I didn't know what it was, but it didn't fit the description of Bigfoot like I had heard of. Okay. And then fast forward all the way to like 2012, and I started hearing about the DNA work being done. And I also, you know, found the Bigfoot community, and I started hearing other stories of people that said it was human looking. And then it was like, ding, 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 ding. Oh, my God, it really was a Bigfoot. You know?
Yeah. So you maintained an interest in it from the time you had this event, but you just didn't talk about it. But you did maintain an interest throughout the years, reading and, okay.
Right, and I talked to a lot of my friends about it, you know, just hanging out with my buddies around that area at the time. And that's where my Northern California Sasquatch Stories series came out of, was my own stories and then the stories of all my friends that I had talked to all around the Northern California area there where I grew up. And not one of them is on the BFRO. Let's just say that, okay? At least 90% of all sightings are never reported. I guarantee it.
I promise you they're not. And some of them are even sent in and they don't publish them, you know, for whatever reason they don't.
Right.
So, yeah.
But I'll tell you, going down the hill that morning, it's like all of us were in shock. It's after we left that place, nobody said a word all the way down the mountain. Everybody, and probably nobody got any sleep, you know. But,
no.
It was.
It was a horrific experience for you guys to go through, and it was like never ending. The night that never ended, practically. It was just like, please, daylight come, you know. Oh my God.
Exactly, it did. It felt like we were like in a battle, and I couldn't wait for it to end. You know, it was like, please stop throwing rocks, stop doing this. You know.
Yeah, they wanted you to leave, but they didn't realize you couldn't leave.
Right. And there are quite a few stories, even in my series. There's quite a few stories from that exact spot, Pinnacle Rock. It's a pretty crazy spot, and nowadays you can't even get in there. Everything's gated off. There's these really odd signs, these yellow signs that say no trespassing. Trespassers will be prosecuted and stuff. And I don't know where these signs came from, but they're uniform all the way down the road for miles in that whole area. Uh-huh. So it really leads me to believe that it's not like private property owners or anything, and it's actually national forest up in there.
That's
so
right.
It's really odd that we used to be able to drive up in there and just go everywhere, and now you can't go anywhere except for just the main road.
Well, see, what they'll claim, and it's probably true, is that people went in there and were trashing it out and writing graffiti all over everything, which that does happen. And so because it is part of a national forest and they try to protect it and everything like that. But I noticed that some of the hottest places that I have researched in the national forest, it always has a sign that it's closed at sunset and does not reopen until dawn.
Right.
And I'm thinking, that's really specific. You know, it closes at dark and it opens at daylight, and they don't want anyone down in there. So that leads me to my next question, and I know that Jeff probably has some questions for you too. But do you think that the parks and wildlife know about these creatures in some places?
Yes.
I do too.
And one of the main reasons I think that is my uncle, actually it was my stepdad's brother, to be more specific, but I called him my uncle. You know, my stepdad was my dad longer than my dad was, put it that way. So my uncle worked for the Fish and Game in California. So he was in the forest like every day for 30 some odd years, all right? He had never seen anything until he was right up to the end of his career, and he had one walk across the road when he went to Fort Bragg over there on the coast, and he came back, and he had one walk right across the road in front of him. And he told me about that, and he also told me not to say a word about that until he was dead and gone, and then he didn't care. He didn't matter anymore.
Wow.
So I waited, and after he was dead and gone, I told his story in one of my videos. And he not only had that story where he saw, and he also told me, they say it's an ape. It's not an ape. It's more like a person. He told me that.
Wow.
And this is before I even had my experience. I was like,
and he didn't mention anything about reporting it to his station or anything like that. He
told me that he wouldn't dare. He said he wouldn't dare say a word about it because other people had said stuff like that. And next thing you know, they had lost their jobs.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like they all knew if something happened like that to be quiet about it, or else it's the end of your career. He was pretty specific about that. Now, this same uncle had some property right on the Eel River by Redwood Valley, and he had a bunch of property, you know, like he had 100 acres or something, a lot. And he was there with his buddy cutting some wood, and there was like a big flood, and the river was super high. And they saw something floating down the river, and they ran over there and looked, and he said it was the same exact thing that he saw across the road, except for it was a female. And they saw a Bigfoot float down the river in the flood. And he said that he wished he could have like fished it out or something, but the water was going so fast. He said by the time he would have even got to the truck, it was already gone.
So was it drowned or was it alive and trying to?
Yeah, it was dead. It was drowned.
Oh wow!
And floating down the river.
Oh my
God. And he, like I say, he was very adamant about me not saying a word to anybody until he's dead and gone. Then he didn't care. So, and I know they know. You know, I just know they know.
Yeah, I agree.
And besides, how could they not? You know,
I know.
They can see
but like
your
you
face
say, they
from a
can't
satellite.
say anything because it would be their job. You know, they can't say anything.
Right.
Now, I know Jeff's fighting a bit over there. Jeff, you know people with fish, parks and wildlife. And what do you think?
Yes. Parks and wildlife, yeah, their official stance versus what most, I won't say most, but it's what some officers will tell you in private is a totally different thing. You know, they have to protect their jobs. They have families they have to support. So, you know, I've grown to understand their public opinion versus their private opinion on certain animals, creatures. And you know, that's just an interesting and amazing story. You know, I mean, actually seeing one coming down in the floodwaters is kind of surreal. You know,
I can just picture that. That's just wild. You'd think they'd be able to. They would be safe from the elements, but not it.
Yeah, you never know.
Everybody's
got caught in a landslide that ended up in the river. You just never know.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you don't.
I mean,
you don't.
Supposedly
one.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say one misplaced step. You know, those rocks are slippery.
Gosh. Wow.
But that's a pretty good one. I've talked to people. I talked to one guy. He said that he worked at Langley, the CIA headquarters, and told me some crazy stories about them actually taking them there and doing studies on them and going after problem ones. And instead of killing them, they take them back to that place and then they try to study them. So I don't know. I'm not saying this is for sure, but I researched this guy, and I thought he was probably pulling my leg. But it come to find out, he still works as a security guard. He is ex-military. All his friends are ex-military. So I don't know. And then I got this other guy I talked to that used to work in Yellowstone as a park ranger. Mm-hmm. And he said that every once in a while they would just close trails like for no reason. One day he took a report from a couple that was from, I think, Germany or Sweden or something. They were from Europe anyway. And he took this report and they said, do the bears all stand up and walk in America? And he said, no. And they saw this quote unquote bear walking along the river on 2 feet, never went on 4, walked, from one line of sight to the other all the way across, and they saw it walk and then go off in the bushes. And they gave him this report. He wrote a report. He turned it in. And this was like the last thing at night. He's had to stay like overtime to finish this. Okay, so he puts in the report. The next morning, first thing, he went to go check on it to make sure that, that it was being processed and make sure that he got everything right. His report was gone. He couldn't find it anywhere.
Oh, my.
And
I'm not surprised.
The trail where they were camped was completely closed. And it wasn't park staff that was there. It was the sheriff that was there guarding that path, letting nobody go down in there, and they were performing some kind of investigation. So,
I've had a similar experiences. We were camping one time, and we had, what were they called? I'm trying to remember. They were wearing vests, and they were questioning all the campers. And the night before, we did have some tremendous activity. And then all of a sudden, these guys show up, and they're not sheriff's department. They're not Parks and Wildlife. They're what were they? I can't remember what was on their vests. That when I looked it up, it was CIA.
Wow.
It was Secret Service. No, it was Secret Service is what it was. And so they were there, and I said, why are y'all here? Well, we're just helping out Parks and Wildlife. And I said, why would you be helping Parks and Wildlife? I didn't understand it. And at the same time, we were seeing trails being closed off. They rattled so many of the campers that a lot of them left. And they didn't want, there was this one couple from Louisiana that were camped next to us, and they had a really rough night. They had a fire built up. It was blowing. It was so tall that fire was above their tent. And I was like, wow, what is scaring them? Well, then after they went into their tent, what was scaring them came down and visited us. And it was just sitting down there in the creek bed growling at us, just growling, would not quit growling. I threw apples down in there and everything else, tried to get to move on, but it never did until we went into our tent. It was just real strange. It was a strange night. Well, the next day when they showed up, one guy came over to see us, and then there were two vehicles. One guy in one vehicle came over to see us, asked us all kinds of questions like, where were we from? What were we doing there? They were looking at everything, you know, to see if we had any kind of equipment. And, of course, I had all kinds of equipment, but it was all out there. You know, it wasn't at the camp. They talked to the people from Louisiana, and it scared them to death. They packed up after that. You know, they came over and talked to us, and they said, well, they really gave us a going over. There were two of them over there with them. And they said, we're leaving this place and never coming back. That's what they said.
Wow.
So, you know, I don't know what was going on. But my guess was they had a rogue. They had one that was being troublesome, and they had to have somebody come in and help or something. That's all I can figure out.
Wow.
It was weird.
Now, you know, I've heard those same similar stories like that from a lot of different people, and I've always had a theory that, you know, we have some government entity that has knowledge of these creatures and their travel and migratory patterns to some extent, and they close certain parts of parks and things like that off at the most opportune times whenever it's either breeding season or they're traveling through there for one reason or another, and they bring in these extra help, so to speak. That way they can question you and find out if you've seen something you shouldn't have seen, and then they can explain to you how it's really, really to your best advantage to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, we just told them we were camping. We didn't tell them we were Bigfoot researchers. We didn't tell them anything like that because we were pointing questions back at them because my friend worked for the sheriff's department. And so she was wanting to know, what are y'all doing there? I forget. I still cannot remember what was on it was like U.S. police or government police or something like that on the back of their vests. They were wearing Kevlar vests and uniforms, but they were not Parks and Wildlife uniforms. And their vehicles were white, and don't know what they were doing there or anything else. And it just had me, you know, he was very evasive. We asked him what his name was. He told us, but that was the limit of why, you know, I said, is there meth labs around here we need to be worried about? You know, I mean, we were really trying to find out, are we not safe here? Do we need to leave? And he said, well, no, you're fine. You're fine. Because I go, are you looking for criminals? Or, you know, of course they can't tell you anything, even if it was something like that I didn't feel like that's why they were there. And the fact that the trails were being cut off and stuff. And, yeah, there was definitely something going on. Definitely. But we're going to be back with Dan in just a moment, but we do need to take intermission. So we're going to head on over there, and we'll be back in about 4 or 5 minutes. Okay? All right. See y'all then. Okay,
yeah, that was
welcome.
a good break.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. Tonight on Night Callers Bigfoot Radio, we have Dan Lindholm from Oregon, and he has had some very good stories to tell us, and I know he has some more. Dan now lives in Klamath Falls, Oregon, which is like serious Bigfoot territory. So, Dan, have you ever had any experiences close to where you live now?
Yes, I have. It's like a whole nother chapter in my story, really.
Okay.
I'm actually I just real quick, I'm going to plug my book, if you don't mind.
No, please do.
Now I'm writing my second book now, and what it's going to be is like Bigfoot autobiography of my life, like from the time I was a little kid all the way up through those Northern California Sasquatch stories for that whole first chapter. And I'm going to finally get it all written down, and it should be pretty dang good. Now, the book I just released, I actually it's on paperback now. Just a few days ago, I finally got it available on paperback. So it's on Amazon or Kindle ebook. And the story, the Wild Boy of Kentucky, was given to me by a guy that was literally on his deathbed. And when I met him, I did not know that. And I met him through this comment thread, and he started telling little bits of this story, and I was like, wow, this guy's got a great story. So I contacted him, and I asked him if he would do Sasquatch Encounters with Ed Brown for my YouTube channel. And he said he would do it, but his voice was bad right now, so he couldn't do it. But as soon as his voice got better, he would do it. So I was like, right on, this is going to be great. The story is great. And then I finally got a hold of me again like a month and a half later, and he was apologizing for not, getting a hold of me. He told me he couldn't talk, and that was that. And he was being placed in hospice care. So he was getting close to the end. Okay, so then like the next day after that, all of a sudden I'm getting these messages, one after another, and I'm getting this just message after message after message from this guy. And he's just writing down everything, his story, from when he was a little kid in Kentucky. And this story is amazing, all right? It just really is. He befriended this young Sasquatch boy, and they became friends, and just the whole story of how they actually started to interact with each other and everything is it's pretty dang cool. It's like one of the best stories I've ever heard. And it was just gifted to me by this guy. And then by the time I got it all edited for him, that's the part I skipped, I guess. I said that he asked if somebody would edit his story for him, and I said, yeah, I do that. I could do it. So I edited the story, and I got back to him, and I posted it on his timeline, and I got no response. It was already over. That was his dying wish, basically, was to get this story out. And, man, it's a good one. It's a really good story. And I just had to get it out there and let people read it, because it answers a lot of questions, like holes in the story, the whole Sasquatch story. It answers tons of questions. And, of course, like any story, you want to take it with a grain of salt and take it, as a story. But, I mean, just the circumstances of which I got it from him, and then the things that do ring true about the story make the parts that seem kind of odd more believable. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, it's a really, really great story. And if you buy the paperback, you get the ebook free. Just throwing that out there. It's not long. It's just a short story. It's only like 48 pages in paperback. It's not very, very long, but it's a good one. And so I just want to throw that out there, let people know about that.
Yes, of course. Of course.
So then now back to where I'm at now. Now, I'm telling you, anybody that lives anywhere near where there's actually Sasquatch, you can find them. All right? Now, I came here, and I decided I was going to try to find them. First thing I did is get on Google Maps and start looking. And what you need to do is look for the most forest you can find, the least people, the roughest terrain. There's got to be water. That's the major element right there, water. Because something 1,000 pounds is probably going to drink 4 gallons a day. I mean, they need water. Okay, so that's what I did when my wife took a job here in Klamath Falls. I was living in Idaho. We were, and so we decided for once in our lives, let's let her be happy. She was happy with the people she lived with, or worked with, and she was working on the road at these hospitals all over the place, and she ended up really liking this place, and they offered her a job. So we came here, and I couldn't find any work in construction, so I finally got a job at Fred Meyer where I work now. But anyway, I started trying to find. I'd been in the community for a couple of years, and I had my Bigtruth page and everything going, and I thought I knew, I might be able to find them. So basically, that's what I did. I got on Google Maps, and then I also got on the BFRO and looked up reports in my county, and then I put the two together. I put the terrain, the forested area, the older the growth, the better. I'm not saying it has to be pristine, never touched, but if it's been sitting for at least 20, 30 years, you're in a good spot, all right? So, so I go to this spot where this guy said he went out fishing at this little lake, and he had rocks thrown at him, and he got screamed at. So I said, okay, that's a pretty good spot. So I start going out there, and we just, at first, for the first year and a half, 2 years, we just found some cool structures and stuff, and didn't really have any interaction. We just, it looked like a good spot, and it seemed like there was some really cool structures that just did not look natural, and they couldn't have been man-made. So we thought it was something, but then I took this buddy out there with me, and it was the first time that anybody was armed. All right, he had a concealed weapon. He had like a 9mm pistol in his belt or something, and it was totally concealed. I didn't even know until we were back from the trip that he even had it on him. And we go out there, and we hear a growl walking down the trail, and we're a good probably a mile away from the campground and stuff at the end of the road. So we're out there a little ways, but we hear this growl off to the left of the trail. So we turn, take a couple steps, and it was no more than just a couple steps that direction. And directly behind us, probably, I don't know, a couple 100 feet back behind us, this tree, all of a sudden we hear this crack, and we turn around and we see this tree, probably a 100-foot tree, coming right at us.
Oh my
but
God!
Like I said, we were 200 feet away, so it didn't come near to hitting us. But it was aimed right at us, and it was totally against the wind. All right. And as this thing is coming down, we heard the crack, so we turned around and we could see the tree falling, and we could hear something running like the Dickens. Right from where the tree came down, we heard it run like in a big semicircle around us. As it's coming down, and then after the tree hit the ground, we still heard it running. And we're like, what in the heck? So we went and investigated the tree, and it's not like a really good full-growth live tree. We're talking about the edge of a reservoir here where at some point it was flooded, and these are like standing dead trees. Okay, so it's not like a live, really good tree, but still a 100-foot tall tree,
Yeah.
It was,
sure.
and it was a good 1.5 across at the base where it got broken. So, it would have taken some strength to get that sucker to come down against the wind right at us. So that was a pretty good one. But then I've had even better experiences. This one day, April 27th, 2015, I made a video of it, and it was the most amazing day ever. We get all the way to the far side of the lake from where we park, and we found this trackway. There was like 6 or 7 really good tracks, and it was in like a little pea gravel, real tight little rocks up the beach a little bit. It wasn't like sand, and you could see darkness in the prints. This was fresh. As the sun was out, for the moisture to be there in those prints, they were probably less than 15 minutes old. Seriously. When we came back out, obviously we couldn't even hardly see them because the sun had dried it all out. So first thing is that, and then we start walking down the beach, and like my peripheral vision, thought I saw something just come out of the bushes and just stop and square up and bail straight back into the bushes. As I raised my eyes, it was bailing back into the bushes. And this is up ahead of us a little ways, a couple 100 yards out on this little point. So we went to that point, and then we went off into the forest. And maybe quarter mile, half mile from there, all of a sudden we hear this crack, crack, crack. And my friend Daniel and I, we just walked around this tree, and Daniel was right behind me. And Daniel was just in this spot like 3 or 4 seconds before this tree was thrown. I measured it later. I've said before in interviews that I thought it was about 16 feet. I actually went out and measured it last year, and it was 22.5 feet long.
Good night.
It was like the very top of a tree, and it was thrown. My stepson was still behind the creek from us, which was back about 50 or 60 feet, and he saw it flying through the air, like not from above, but from out in front of us.
It was flying horizontally. Yeah.
Right. And when I turned around, I saw it bounce about 3 feet. You know, it hit the ground and bounced. And I was like, what in the world? You know, and I thought for sure it was my stepson, like, because once in a while he'll, like, knock over trees or whatever, thinking, you know, he's some kind of a bad dude or whatever. But, like I say, he was 50, 60 feet behind us. And sure enough, this thing came out of nowhere. So we're like, oh, my gosh. So those guys are scared. They're just standing there, and I start walking towards where the tree came from. And then I found this really cool bed. I mean, big. This tree had fallen. There was a big windstorm probably a month before, and it was all smashed down. Like, you could totally tell that something had been laying in there, and it was like a huge area, like a whole bunch of somethings had been laying in there. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. So then we start hiking a little more, and we didn't get more than, 30, 40 yards from that bedding, and all of a sudden we hear this big thump, like something was thrown again. And we didn't know what it was. We didn't know if it was rock or whatever. But my stepson goes off into the woods a little bit, kind of, just kind of exploring. And I was standing there with my video camera, just like, checking out the scene. And all of a sudden we hear this clapping, like clap, 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 really super loud up in this tree above Brenton. And Brenton actually jumped behind this other tree when this happened, and he's all looking up. And he said the whole tree shook when we heard this clapping up in the tree. And it's on the video. You can actually hear the clapping. It was loud. It was loud. And so right after that, I pan over to where he's at, and I just pan up the tree and then back down and then look around. And later on, I'm looking at this, and I swear it looks like kind of a pointy head way up in this tree. And it looked like it was looking, like trying to look down at those guys that were below it. And then maybe it noticed me or whatever, but all of a sudden it looked like it just ducked back behind the bushes, way up in the tree. I see this black figure. And, of course, it's out of focus and everything, but interesting.
Because you didn't know it was there. That's the way it always happens, so. Yeah.
Right, and especially with the clapping coming out of that particular tree. That was really interesting, okay. And then shortly after that, my friend gets hit with a stick in the back of his leg. And he's freaking out. He had his gun with him, and he pulls it out, and he's all, God dang it, you sons of guns, not using that language. And, me and my stepson both turned around and went back, what, dude? And then in this one video, the Sasquatch and Dogman footage, or possible Sasquatch and Dogman footage on my channel, I show where there's two things in this bush, and, I mean, you got to watch it in HD to really see what I'm seeing. But I swear I can see it. It looks like a little dogman in this bush, and this Bigfoot next to it. And it's not too far from me. And it's like you said, you always see it later. You don't see it at the time. And there's only been a couple times where I've actually seen something with my right. But when you examine the video, you find these things, and then it's always a blob squatch. And I try to do it in the spirit of Mitch Waite's face database. He never tried to claim for sure that it was Sasquatch, but he was just trying to compare this image to that image and see, if you see comparisons, and you know what I mean? So that's kind of in the spirit of how I'm doing it. Plus, I've always shared. I've always been a sharer. I want to share my experiences. I want to share this. I want people to understand what's going on, I want people to share with me, so I share. So after accumulating these images I accumulated these images for a few years, and then decided to just go ahead and why not? Just, instead of a select few people sending them the pictures and stuff and having them go, whoa, I said, you know what? I'm just going to put it out there. And like I said, nothing's definitive. It's blob squatches. It is. But pretty interesting when you can see movement between different pictures and such. Okay, so I think I actually caught them a few times out there. And, boy, it's...
Have there been dogman sightings in that area?
You know, not like recorded, but I have heard of dogman here in Oregon, but it's not like Bigfoot. You know what I mean? You don't see it nearly as much. And honestly, I think that this is a very special area. Okay, this is the Sky Lakes Wilderness takes up a huge area, and all the way from the Canadian border all the way to California, all through the Cascades. It's like the biggest green spot that you can find.
Yeah.
Where it hasn't been logged. And it's adjoining to Crater Lake National Park, which is huge. So that is to the north, and then you got your Sky Lakes Wilderness area. And between those two, it's a big swath of the Cascades where there's basically no access unless you walk. You know, it's totally closed to motorized travel. And it's a mecca for them. It's a spot where I truly believe there's like a community of them out there. I think places like over by Soha, I'm sure you've heard of Dr. Johnson and his Soha. I've been there. I think places like that where it's more rural and, you know, just forested, mountains in between houses and stuff. I think family groups, for the most part, is what you're going to find there. But like in my area out here, I think it's a special place where there's a large group. And so I think you're going to find everything out here at some point. You know, whatever there is.
Dan, I have to ask you, are you talking on a speakerphone?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Am I
because
echoing?
I'm hearing I'm hearing a rustling, and I cannot figure out who it is. I can't. See, it's perfectly quiet now that I said something.
I'm pacing all over the place, so it's probably me.
Oh, are you? Oh, okay.
It's what I do when I'm on the phone.
Okay, it got quiet now.
But, yeah. And this last summer, I was lucky enough to have Adam Davis come out, and Ed Brown and Claudia Ackley. They all came out to my area, and we spent a couple days, and it was pretty cool. I think I caught a rock throw on video, and if it's not a rock throw on video, then something's up in the tree moving, because you can actually see a branch of the tree move right before the flash that I think is the rock. And it's either the rock hitting the tree and coming down, or there was something up in that tree. But anyway, we had a rock throw right before that landed right next to us on the trail, and then we stopped and just hung out for a minute, and I was videotaping. And again, it was after the fact that I caught this movement, you know, and boy, that was pretty interesting. And we did hear Ed Brown has got amazing ears. Just want you all to know that. Ed Brown has amazing ears. But he especially could hear us being followed like practically all day, the second day. You could hear him off in the bushes, you know, and we were being shadowed. And, you know, I've had rock throws since that one time when the tree got pushed over. Yeah. You know, I told you that before that it was pretty mellow, you know, there wasn't much interaction. Since then, there's only been a couple trips out there where I didn't have rocks thrown. It's like a switch was flipped, and this is one of my theories. I like to keep them just irritated enough to throw rocks at me. I don't want them to be friends. I don't want to gift them. I don't want to give them stuff. I don't want them to associate me with, because I think rock throws are one of the most significant things, because you cannot explain that away.
No, you can't.
You know, bears don't throw rocks. So that's why I strive to keep on that thin edge of having them just irritated enough, but not, I don't want to be too aggressive or anything, because I don't want to scare them back in there another couple miles, because then I'll never find them. Because right now I'm already hiking about 5 miles out in there, you know. So there's a limit. What's that? Hello?
Hello? I can hear you.
Oh, hey.
Oh, she dropped out.
Yeah, she
We
did.
couldn't say we must have lost Lori.
Yeah, she dropped out. Well, Jeff, you got anything? Oh, she's back.
Lori's back.
I'm sorry. I was asking him if he ever camped out. You know, he hiked in and camped out there. I'm sorry, my phone just went.
No, I have not. And I'm actually tentative about doing that. I don't mind camping there at the campground and going in during the day. But with the kind of activity that I've had during the day, I'm honestly not really thrilled about the idea of going out there and staying the night.
I can understand that.
Maybe it's because of
you
what happened
end
to
up
me when
meeting
I
a
was a kid.
widowmaker, you know, big old tree fall right on your tent.
Right. But yeah, you know, I've thought about that a few times, and then we were actually going to do that last summer, but we ended up just staying in the campground, and I think that's probably the best thing.
Yeah. Well, how about you, Jeff? We have like 12 minutes left. Do you have any questions for Dan? I feel like I've been hogging the guest.
No, you've been just everything I would ask, you've asked. So it was like, great.
No. Oh. Well. Well, now I'm kind of... Hey, do you have any other stories to share with us, Dan? We do have just about 11 minutes left.
Sure. Back in 2013, in October, my stepson and I went down to Lake County in California, where I grew up, by Clear Lake there. My mom still lives there. And he happened to have found some girl online, you know, and he was talking to her, and she lived there. So it was like, oh, cool. You know, I wanted to go see my mom, and he's like, I want to go so I can see my girl. So, okay, cool. So we go down there for a few days, and Brenton is my stepson's name. He was actually seeing his girl, and it was like on the other side of the lake from where my mom lives. So I went over there in the evening time to pick him up, and instead of driving right along the lake on the highway to go back to my mom's, I decided to go up over the mountain because
take the back road.
I was into Sasquatch at this time, and I decided, you know, maybe we'll just stop a few times and just listen, you know, whatever. So it's already like dusk, and we're going up this ridge, going to the top of the mountain, and the road was cut out. You know how it is in the mountains a lot of times, where one side will be like mountainside, real steep, and then the other side's like a cliff. It was kind of like that. And up above my truck, this is, you know, it's nice out. So we had the windows down and everything driving along. We hear something running up above us on this hill. Sounded like a person running right alongside my truck. We're like, what in the heck is that? So we didn't see nothing. So then we stopped and we parked and we listened, and we didn't hear nothing. And then we get down the road a little further, and Brenton says he has to go to the bathroom. So I'm all right, we'll stop at the next spot. So there's this little spot where the road splits off, and there's another little fire road that goes off. So I stop right there at that road. He gets out, and as soon as he gets out, I start hearing these big footsteps on my side of the road, on the other side of the road, and it's dark now, okay? We've been driving for a while, and it's dark. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. And it totally sounded like bipedal steps. You know, and rustling through the leaves and stuff over here where I couldn't see. I had my headlights on and everything, and it was almost like it was trying to get out of my headlights coming back. I was like, oh, my gosh. And he gets back in the truck, and I'm like, dude, did you hear these footsteps? He's all, dude, I think I just saw one looking at me when I was going to the bathroom. And I'm like, what? And he's all, yeah, but it didn't move. It didn't move at all. And I'm all, that's what they do. So I can still hear something rustling over to the side, on my side, and he starts telling me that he can see this thing behind the tree. He said that he could see the hand moving, like the hand was on his side of the tree, and he kept seeing it peek around and look. And honestly, I did not even look out his window because I was too concerned about what was going on my side of the road. All right.
Right.
Because I could still hear stuff moving over here, and I kept hitting the brakes so I could see behind me. I kept looking in the rearview mirror, hoping nothing would sneak up on us. I mean, it was really intense, and I made sure the headlights stayed on, and we're sitting there for a minute, and all of a sudden, I'm parked right up against this bush, and right on the other side of the bush, on our side of the headlights, mind you, something leans out and looks in the window at Brenton in the passenger seat, and I was in the driver's seat.
Oh.
And I could see it, you know, it was backlit from the headlights. It looked like it had these gray mutton chops. Something leans out and looks in and then ducks back behind the bush. And we both saw it plain as day, and we're like, what in the heck? You know, like I say, it didn't see no detail. All I could see is it was backlit. And we were both like, oh, my God. And he's all, oh, my God, this is awesome. And I'm like, I think we should go. And he's all, no, we got to stay. I'm all, no, I think we should go. And he's all, no. So we're sitting there. All of a sudden, on his side of the road, I hear this, hoo, hoo. And then on my side of the road, we hear this, hoo, hoo. And right down the hill from my side of the road, all of a sudden it sounded like 20 of them going, hoo, 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 hoo.
Oh,
and I was like,
Lord.
that's it, we're done. And I started it up, and we drove away. All right. That's the only time, all the times that I think I've been around them, that was the only time that I ever felt like prey, like I was being hunted or something. It scared the living daylights out of me, I'm telling you.
I believe that. Wow. I would love to
That
do
was
this.
kind of scared me.
I would love to go down that road. I would like to go down that road. Wow. I don't think you can top that. That is a great story right there. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how people can find Bigtruth blog and where people can find your videos and stuff like that? Why don't you tell us about that?
Okay,
before?
yeah. Well, you can start by liking the page on Facebook. Just look up Bigtruth on Facebook, the page, and it's basically a news, like a newspaper. Every day I just collect up all the Bigfoot stuff and throw it out there, so people can follow it all without having to find it themselves, which is kind of nice. And then I started up the old YouTube channel way back in the day when I started my Northern California Sasquatch Stories. And like it said in the intro, I had Ed Brown come on board, and man, he's the best. I mean, he's just a great guy and a really good host, and he's a natural. He does a really good job. So we've interviewed everybody from Jeff Meldrum, Derek Randalls, Cliff Brockman, Ken Gerhardt. I mean, you name it, we've interviewed them. And so all those are on there on the YouTube channel, Bigtruth. And then my current research can be found there, and the old stories. And then we got the blog, bigtruthblog.blogspot.com. And like it said in the intro, Scott Harper is writing a series for me on the early history of each state, which is a really, really good little series.
I think I would like that.
Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. And
so what are your plans for the future? What is your goal?
Well, I don't really have
Where
a
are
goal.
you going with all of this?
The Bigtruth umbrella is pretty big. We got a bunch of stuff going on all the time. And basically, I look at myself as like a community service person or something for the community, for the Bigfoot community, you know. I try to help people tell their stories. I believe people's stories. And we're actually supposed to, now I'm going to better knock on wood, but here in April we're supposed to spend a few days filming down in L.A., and then in the summertime we're supposed to spend about a week in my area doing some filming for a documentary. So that should be really fun and interesting. And, and I'll have a couple big-name people involved with that you will recognize. But I don't want to say too much about it, just in case something happens. It doesn't work out. But I'm pretty excited about it. That's basically what I'm doing with all my days off this year. You know, I'm gonna make that dang movie. And you know, it's kind of just going. I just want to get out in the field as much as I can, and
yes.
you know, I've got several people who are really interested in going out in my area with me, so they're going to come and visit as soon as the snow thaws. And you know, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm going to try to find some real evidence. One of these days, somebody's going to get the picture or the video. You know what I mean? It's just a matter of time. I know they're out there. I know a lot of people are out there with them, and it's going to happen.
It is.
You know, but, you know, I'm not trying to get rich off Bigfoot or nothing like that. There's no money in Bigfoot, trust me. People think there's money in Bigfoot. There's no money in Bigfoot.
They do. That's crazy.
I spend all my money for Bigfoot. I don't make any money off of Bigfoot.
Right.
And most researchers are that way. You know, I'm friends with a lot of big name researchers even, and almost all of them have regular jobs. It's just, you know, there's no money in Bigfoot. There's not. And so, you know, I'm just trying to keep on keeping on and going to keep doing what I love. I can't help but get out in the forest. I just love it. I love it out there, even if there wasn't no Bigfoot out there.
That was me. Yeah, I was out in the forest a whole long time. Well, not a real long time, but I mean for years before I even knew there was something out there. So I do. There's nothing more wonderful and good for your soul is to get out into the wilderness, and it's just really good for you.
It really is.
Well, I tell you what, Dan, you were a wonderful guest and told such a good account of everything that you've experienced, and we thank you for sharing that with us.
Yes, thank you very much.
And we thank you for your
welcome.
Bigtruth blog, which I'm going to go check out. I'm sorry I hadn't done it before now. And also, I am going to read The Wild Boy of Kentucky. That sounds like a fascinating book. It really does. I really would like to read it. So I'll be buying that probably off of Amazon or Kindle, he said. So everyone, check that out. Check that out. And Dan, we do thank you for coming on. Time to say goodnight, though. Next week we're having, oh my goodness, where is my calendar? Say, Chuck Swab. And what's interesting about Chuck Swab is that he has a radio show in Oklahoma that deals with Bigfoot, and it is actual FM radio station. So anyway, he has agreed to be a guest next week, so we'll be bringing him on. So everyone, we want y'all to have a great night and keep on squashing. We'll see y'all later.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.